One.
Hello, and thanks for joining us. Welcome to the 2020 American Diabetes Association Living with Diabetes Ask the Expert series. Today's topic is healthy food swaps for the holiday season. My name is Carla Cox, registered dietitian nutritionist and certified diabetes care and education specialist, and your host for today's program. Our Ask the Expert series is all about answering questions from our listeners. So start getting your questions ready. For those of you on the phone, press *3, that's *3 on your keypad, and an operator will collect your question and place you in the queue so that you may have the opportunity to ask your question live. To participate online, type in your name and question in the fields below the streaming player. Press the Submit Question button, and your question will come directly to us. Stay with us through the hour, and you will learn useful tips to help you live well on your journey with diabetes. In addition, we invite you to provide us with your feedback in our 5-question survey at the end of the event. Okay, now a little bit about why we're here today. Because of the link between diabetes and heart health, the American Diabetes Association, in collaboration with the American Heart Association, has launched No Diabetes by Heart, with support from founding sponsors Boehringer Ingelheim and Eli Lilly and Company, Diabetes Alliance, and Novo Nordisk, as well as national sponsors Sanofi, AstraZeneca, and Bayer. The No Diabetes by Heart initiative provides tools and resources for people living with type 2 diabetes to learn how to reduce their risk of cardiovascular disease. As part of the initiative, the ADA is holding this free educational Q&A once a month. We'll cover information and tips to help you take charge of your health. The health and safety of all those we serve at the American Diabetes Association is always our top priority. COVID-19 continues to be a serious health threat. In general, people with diabetes face greater risks of complications when dealing with a viral infection, and that is true with COVID as well. Current CDC recommendations to protect yourself state that you wash your hands often. If soap and water are not readily available, use hand sanitizer that contains at least 60% alcohol. Avoid touching your face. Practice safe social distancing and put distance between yourself and other people. Cover your mouth and nose with a mask or cloth face covering when around others. The ADA encourages people with diabetes to follow the guidance of the CDC and to contact your medical provider if you suspect that you are showing any symptoms or have been exposed to COVID-19. For our most up-to-date information, please visit our website at diabetes.org/coronavirus or call 1-800-DIABETES, or that is 1-800-342-2383. Like many of you, we are still practicing social distancing, and so we are proud to present this month's Q&A from our own homes. I am happy to introduce our guest for today's event, Jennifer Troupe. Jennifer is a registered dietitian nutritionist and certified diabetes care and education specialist. She is a Montana native with a vast experience throughout the continuum of patient care from hospital to ambulatory, administration, and industry. She has over 20 years of experience working as a clinician and is specialized in the care of persons with diabetes. She has a passion for diabetes prevention as well as treating obesity. One of her crowning achievements was becoming the developer and administrator of the Endocrinology, Diabetes, and Nutrition Center, which was the premier center in Western Montana, as well as the only bariatric surgery center in Western Montana. Jennifer's belief is simple: put the patient first in all decisions. Jennifer, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Thank you, Carla. Just very happy to be here today. I am Jennifer Troupe. I'm a dietitian as well as a diabetes educator, as Carla mentioned, and am now working with different hospital systems and helping them to implement remote monitoring with their patients. So I'm focusing a lot on diabetes patients and how we can really help keep you in touch with your doctor during COVID and beyond from your own home. And I'm excited to see you again, Carla. It's always fun to work with you.
Thank you. Thanks, Jennifer. And as we are waiting for our callers and online listeners to chime in, and I'm seeing there's quite a list, I'm going to go ahead and kick it off with the first question. Many persons with diabetes are stressed about how to manage eating and the holidays. Can you give us a few starting tips for managing food choices during the holiday season?
I sure can, and it is a tough season. We all know that there's a potential for weight gain, higher blood sugars. There's also a certain amount of emotions during the holidays, and I think one of the first things I would just say is let's just take a deep breath about the holidays. Remember what is important, and keep your health up there as a priority. So in doing that, some of the basics, of course, would be just make sure you're getting those non-starchy fruits and vegetables, especially about half of your plate full of those at whatever meal that is. Making sure you're taking time for yourself to exercise, whether it's walking, swimming, going to a gym if you're allowed with masking. It just depends on what that is, but you really need to do that. And I think the other piece of this is doing the best you can to plan ahead what you're going to eat, if you know what you're going to serve, or if you're going to somebody else's house. Make sure that you maybe ask what they are going to serve and what you could bring, and bring in one of those items that you know that is kind of one you could always go to if you want to have more of something because you know what is in it, you know, the carb amount, that type of thing.
Great. Thanks, Jennifer. Good tips. If you are just joining us, welcome to today's Ask the Experts Q&A. We're going to discuss healthy food choices to make during the upcoming holiday season. As a reminder, for those of you on the phone, press *3, that's *3, on your keypad, and an operator will collect your question and place you in a queue so that you may have the opportunity to ask your question live. To participate online, type in your name and question in the fields below the streaming player. Press the Submit Question button, and your question will come directly to us. Now, let's take the first question from our audience. Michael Cummins from Hermitage, you are online.
Wow, first one. My question, what's the time frame from when you eat a meal to when that is going to show up in your blood sugar? I've been going like with 2 hours after eating and taking a meal, and I don't know what sometimes to credit it to after a meal or pre-meal. So that's my question. Time frame for when that turns into sugar into your blood. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, that's a good question. Good one to start us out with. So there's a few different, answers to that. Certainly, if you're trying to focus on how food affects your blood sugar levels, always taking before the meal and 2 hours after is a good time frame. Your blood sugar could really should come back to normal as close as it can to the pre-meal within 2 hours. That there are a lot of factors, however, that affect that. For example, if your meal is really all carbohydrate and not fat, there isn't really any fat, that could be faster. If carbohydrate really does hit your blood sugars within 15 minutes. So if it's just like you're drinking juice and having a piece of white bread, let's say, that could hit very fast. And so really within an hour, you might want to check and see how high you're going to go versus a meal that has a lot of fat in it. Say you're having a slice of prime rib. I know that's not necessarily the Thanksgiving meal, but it's sometimes part of, let's say, a Christmas meal, a prime rib with, mashed potatoes that have a lot of butter in them. That's going to elongate that. We actually talk about the pizza effect in blood glucose control. Sometimes it can actually take you out about 4 hours because fat definitely delays the absorption of carbohydrate. But the basic rule of thumb is check pre-meal, and 2 hours after is really going to give you a good idea of how that meal affected your blood sugar. Does that help?
Thank you, Jennifer. Jennifer, you might want to talk a little bit more into your phone because you're kind of skipping out a little bit, just to let you know.
Okay.
Okay, we are now going to go to Chuck from Hilton Head, South Carolina.
Hi, I have 3 questions. I've been to my doctor, and he says I have high glucose and high triglycerides and should be on a low carbohydrate diet. He says to start out at 60 grams of carbohydrate per day and work down to 30. we went to a dietitian and she said, oh no, you could have like 120 per day of carbohydrates. So I'd like to know, first of all, how many grams do you recommend of carbohydrates and how many grams of sugar per day?
Okay. Well, another good question. Carla, just to check, can you hear me better with this?
That's much better. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So, yes, well, this is a big controversy right now. I actually did a presentation on low carb and ketogenic diets for the Taking Control of Your Diabetes group. And when you look at research, that's what we have to go back to, is what does the research say over thousands of patients and over years of study. And so what I first would say is, what do you normally eat? What's your normal pattern? We take a look at that, and then just kind of as I answer the previous question, let's look and see how are those meals affecting your blood sugar. I would say going 60 grams of carb per day to
You're
30,
really
that's pretty low. Okay. Is this better?
Yes.
Okay. I'll try just not to move. But going from 60 grams of carb to 30, that's just very low. So I would not advise that. I mean, I think you have to find what works best for you, and that's really what we're learning with some of the new studies. So what that's just what I would go to. So I guess the dietitian recommended 120. Again, what do you normally have? And if you normally are having 100 grams per meal, well, that's going to probably spike you unless you are a marathon runner that can burn that off. So, I mean, a basic recommendation would be 30 to 45 grams. But again, I really look at what you're doing and what fits with your lifestyle, because a radical change typically does not stick. So it's hard to give you a definitive answer of how much carbohydrate to have per meal or per day, because those guidelines are changing, and they recently changed from the American Diabetes Association Nutrition Consensus Statement. So again, I'm just going to go back to, what do you normally have? Let's check your blood sugars 2 hours after a meal, and if they're high being really over 180, and again, it depends on the goals your doctor has set and what you have set. That's what I would look at first, and what you can live with. As far as the grams of sugar, sugar is carbohydrate, so that's included in that whole carbohydrate amount. You don't separate those out. They all kind of act as one. So it's just strictly looking at count the grams of carbs, look at that food label, find out how much total carbohydrate is in that food. If anything, you want to look at fiber and make sure you're getting more fiber in those carbohydrates, because that is going to benefit your health and your blood sugars overall. Did that sound better, Carla?
Thank you. Yeah, I think that's a little bit better. Still cutting out a little bit. But to clarify, when Jennifer actually cut out, was 30 to 45 grams per meal is very, very reasonable. So once again, depending upon your specific needs, but that's a very reasonable number versus 30 to 45 per the whole day. So thank you for that question. Now we'll go to Vanessa in Northern Virginia. Vanessa, you're on.
Hi. Thank you for taking my question. Counting carbs has always seemed like a hassle to me. I realize it is important, but I was hoping that you might have a suggestion to help me have less of an attitude about counting carbs. And maybe a shortcut or a scale, or I don't know, something to help me.
So you're struggling with counting carbohydrates. And so when you mention, can you tell me a little more about that? Do you have a reference book to look these up? The Calorie King,
Jennifer,
for example, is one that we've used.
Great. She's offline, so you'll just have to answer the question. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. So I guess my suggestion for that question is, normally if you're in front of me, I'm going to look and see what are you really using. There are so many online resources. I think we want to make this easy and simple. And unless you're on a very tight insulin regimen that needs to be titrated, I think a general estimation could be okay. We don't want to stress out about it. So certainly there are a lot of great scales out there that based on the weight of the food, you can count the carbohydrate. But I really like the Calorie King books. There's, in general, just a lot of the resources the American Diabetes Association has that you can look at. But really, when you think about it, just a slice of bread's about 15 grams. Half a cup of like mashed potatoes is 15 grams of carb. A third cup of rice, half a cup of pasta, and moving towards whole grains with that. So there's a lot of general guides out there, and that even though very many different manufacturers will have different carb amounts, and you can always go to that food label and look at how much you're having based on that food label and counting the grams there. Make it easy, I guess, and just don't stress about it as much unless there's some really tight reason that you need to do that. And then certainly a food scale can be beneficial. And I always recommend to my patients, a lot of us eat the same foods over and over again. So what do you eat? What's your normal breakfast? What's your lunch? What's your dinner? What are those foods you commonly eat? And then kind of keeping a chart and noting the carb amounts, because eventually that's just going to be in your head and you're going to know that. There's also a lot of great apps out there that can help you with counting those carbs. And there's are some that where you can just take a picture of your meal, and if your blood sugars were within range after that meal, hey, that was a good meal to have, and you can save those. So I don't know, hopefully that helps. Carla, do you have any other app suggestions? I know there are so many out there that are beneficial.
Yeah, I mean, I think for many of us, just going to Calorie King and looking it up, and you can either get that as an app or you can get it as a hard copy book. I think that's one of the best places to go. There are others as well, and you can just Google apps for diabetes and carbohydrates, and it'll give them to you. If you really need to be precise, you can also get what's called a smart scale, and it not only gives you back, you put on an apple and it comes back and says, this apple has 20 grams of carbs. So that's also a nice tool if you need to be pretty precise. So thank you. So we're going to go to Luella now. Luella, you're on.
Yes, I recently found out that my A1C went up to an 11, and the holidays are getting ready to come in. I just want some excellent tidbits on how to get my A1C down and how to discipline myself during the holidays.
Wow. Well, that is a loaded question. Boy, you guys are really putting me through a test today. So the A1C, for one, I would, when you have an A1C of 11, that really means you probably need to be on insulin. So I would just check with your doctor as well what's your medication regimen, because there's only so much you're going to be able to do with food and lifestyle and exercise modifications without having insulin to really help bring that down. So that's one thing. Definitely talk to your doctor. What's your medication regimen? Let's make sure you're on something that's going to help bring your blood sugars down. The second piece of getting through the holidays with discipline, I think, one, take it easy on yourself. Two, I think one of the best things, and I know Carla would agree with me, is just try to incorporate a walk, some kind of movement in your day. We know that sensitizes your cells to insulin. It helps bring your blood sugars down. It helps with stress, helps burn calories. It's always a great thing to do. And then just really, I think I would just start with, so half of your plate with non-starchy vegetables like lettuce, like broccoli, like Brussels sprouts, and just really work on those types of things. There's green beans, and there's a little bit of carb in some of these foods, but there's so much fiber, and they fill you up. And there's a lot of great dishes out there. Like roasted vegetables, I think is probably like my go-to. And I roast some vegetables and make sure that they're the non-starchy ones, and make sure half your plate is full. That's a start. And then it's just that you just keep working with your doctor. I would make sure you also have a diabetes educator on your team and a dietitian to help with meal planning and to give you support, because that is always needed. You're not in this alone. This is a chronic disease, and you need that support.
So Jennifer, could you speak to, I think one of the other things sometimes people try and do is decide that they want a big dinner over the holidays, so they don't eat all morning. They don't eat in the afternoon, and they just go to their evening meal pretty hungry. Any advice for that?
Yeah, that's a great question, Carla. Definitely, we do not want to do one large meal. The basic science of blood sugars and carbohydrate counting, for one, is the more carbohydrates you have at one meal, the higher your blood sugars are going to be and the worse you're going to feel. So you want to really break that up. So plus, if we fast all day and then have that meal, typically we will overeat. And we could even eat more calories than we would have had we planned and spaced our meals out appropriately. So for energy, at least 3 meals a day, just to break those up to keep your blood sugars regulated where you will not have a spike. You want to break those up. So yeah, very good question. The fasting, even though I know intermittent fasting is a rage, I will tell you right now, again, the research does not support that with diabetes for a variety of reasons.
Thank you. All right, we're going to Veronica. Veronica from Maryland.
Hi, I'm type 2 diabetic. I've always heard that white potatoes are not good for you unless you bake them, but sweet potatoes are very good for you. So maybe it depends on the portion. I don't know. But the white potato does make my sugar go up, And I'd like to know which is best for you. What do you think?
Yeah. Well, you are right. White potatoes are they are very close. I mean, they can raise your blood sugar fast and high, depending on the amount that you have. So you're right. It does go down to the amount. A half a cup of mashed potatoes versus 3 cups. Right, you are going to have a higher glucose load. There's something called kind of the Glycemic Index, which we don't really have our patients use, but it's definitely a measurement in the laboratory of kind of how high and how fast the food raises your blood sugar. So white potato is higher on that than a sweet potato, but a sweet potato is also carbohydrate. Sweet potato has a variety of vitamins and minerals, but so does a white potato. So I think I encourage a mix. I think if you like sweet potatoes, but you still have to count the carbohydrates. So you can't say, I'm going to have sweet potatoes and I'm going to have more of these because I'm not having white potatoes. There's still that carbohydrate amount that's very similar between the two. It's just the sweet potatoes don't raise your blood sugar as high or as fast. But again, it depends what you're mixing it with too. So as far as baked potato versus mashed, they're basically the same as far as how high or how fast they're going to raise your blood sugar. Again, if you're putting a bunch of butter, sour cream, bacon on it, well, that might slow down how high your blood sugar goes, but you're also adding a lot of saturated fat. That's artery clogging fat. That is not beneficial for you as well. So what I would say, what do you like? If you like mashed white potatoes, then just look at how much carbohydrate you can have at that meal and then adjust. And if that's your favorite part of that meal, well, then you can have a little more of that and less of some other carbohydrate, like maybe you skip the roll and have more salad or, roasted other types of vegetables or protein that's leaner to make up for that. It's a long answer, Carla. Hopefully I hit the high points.
Great, thank you. And you mentioned fats. Are there some healthy fats? Like what would be a healthy fat? Give me some examples. We have healthy fats over the holidays.
Yeah, and that really is so important. There's so much research going into this right now, and really where we are, where our fat content should be when we have diabetes, and the role of the monounsaturated and polyunsaturated fats. And definitely, we still have to watch how much fat we have if we're trying to control our weight and monitor our weight, because definitely fat. The more fat we have, it's so dense in calories, it can add to weight gain. But there are the fats like olive oil, for example. If you use that in your salad dressing or cook with it, you can't cook at real high heats, but you can cook with it that canola oil. Maybe adding walnuts to a salad. There's a lot of beneficial omegas in those. Maybe instead of having prime rib, offer salmon, which has those omega-3 fatty acids, which are really beneficial in looking at inflammation as well as just really helping to prevent coronary artery disease or heart disease.
Great, thank you. So we're going to go to, hold on. We're going to go to Karen from Pennsylvania. Karen, you're on.
Hi, I was wondering, my daughter always says about fruit. You had said about fruit that you can eat. I was wondering, well, first of all, I'm going to ask you one so I don't forget to ask you. I always get leg cramps when I eat bananas. Is there something up with that?
You're cutting out. Can you get closer to the phone? Did you get that question?
Are you talking
Karen?
to me?
Did you get
No,
the
I'm
question?
talking to Karen.
Oh.
Yeah, could you ask it
Sorry.
again, please, Karen?
Okay. Whenever I eat bananas, I get leg cramps. Is there some reason why bananas give you leg cramps?
That's an interesting question. It's actually, I would say the opposite. Typically, if you're having leg cramps, you might want to have bananas because of the potassium that is in them that can help actually prevent those types of situations. So I wonder if it's just coincidence, or maybe there's something else going on that may be giving you leg cramps. But no, I do not know from the research that bananas contribute to leg cramps. If anything, they might help prevent them.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So, Ada, what is your question? Ada from Florida, you're on.
Hi, this is talking to you. What? Say hello. Hello. Me? Yes. Hello. I gave them an answer. Hello. Hello.
Hello, you're on. Yes. What was your question? Did you have a question?
Who are you speaking to? He wants to know your question. My question was, what happens when your blood goes up very high, up to 200 or 275? What do you do to take for it?
All right. If your blood sugar goes up to 200 or 275, the question is, what do you take for it? So, again, this depends really on what your medication regimen is with your doctor. If you're on insulin, typically you should have an insulin kind of a sensitivity factor or a correction factor that you take, for example, 1 unit to lower your blood sugar 50 points. Now, again, this is not for everybody. You need to talk to your doctor or diabetes educator really about what the right sensitivity factor is for you to lower your blood sugars. So I would make sure you get that confirmed if you're on insulin. If you're not on insulin, you may want to talk to your doctor about that if you're consistently going up to 200 to 275 and cannot get it down, because you might need to add insulin or another type of medication to your diabetes care plan. One thing that you can do really is just go for a walk. And you guys are going to hear me say this probably a lot, but exercise can help lower your blood sugars. So that's really one of the only things you can do. You could try to definitely cut back a little bit on the carbs at that point in time that you're eating and eat more of the non-starchy vegetables and protein in your meal, like maybe having a salad with turkey on it or something like that. But if that's consistently happening, you really need to go talk to your doctor or diabetes educator because you just might need to make an adjustment in your diabetes care plan.
Thank you. Betty, what question do you have?
Yes,
Betty from Illinois.
My question is, besides when you have snacks, besides carrots and celery and cauliflower and broccoli, what else can you have?
Oh, for a snack? Oh boy, there's a lot of great snacks out there. sounds like you've been kind of leaning more towards the non-starchy vegetables as snacks, and I'm not sure what your dietitian or
Well, I'm
doctor
trying to
has.
get away from the chips and the potato chips
Mhm.
and stuff like that. That's what I'm trying to. But if I eat too many veggies, I get tired of that too. So.
I don't blame you. What variety is the spice of life, right? So, and I know those potato chips can be hard to quit. I tell you, there's those salt and pepper ones that, man, taste good. So, I get you can have carbohydrate as a snack, for example, depending on what your regimen is. So, like, I mean, a lot of times I will recommend to my patients 15 grams of carb, which a lot of the yogurts, the Greek yogurts, for example, that are light or lower in sugar, really can be great that way. Of course, there are things like the mozzarella, the kind of the part skim string cheese that you can add with that vegetable as well. Nuts. Again, I mentioned walnuts or almonds. Again, you want to portion those out because they can add up in calories pretty fast because they are calorically dense. But nuts are a great snack, and they're also part of the DASH diet eating plan, which they have like some magnesium in them, and again those heart healthy oils in the nuts that can help actually with blood pressure management as well. There's a lot. Again, the American Diabetes Association has a lot of great snack ideas. I would definitely go there. It's really if you want some crackers or whole grain crackers, for example. Again, it's just counting out how many are 15 grams of carb. There are a lot of there's the air pop snacks that can mix it up. Like, for example, there's some of the popcorns that are light and they're in individual bags. And that's one thing I would recommend as well. If you're somebody who kind of has a craving for that salty chip, the Smart Food, for example, popcorn, or there are the baked chips. Certainly if you really want something like that, but it's lower in calories, and they come in individual bags. Because an open bag of chips is dangerous. So I would go for the prepackaged items as much as possible to help control that.
So, another place you can go is diabetes.org and go to the Food Hub, and there's a bunch of recipes there. So that's another place you can go and maybe get some good ideas for some healthy snacks and some healthy menus for your holidays.
Yeah, that's a great resource.
Yeah, it's a wonderful resource. Joe, you are on the line.
Yes. Can you tell me if you're eating 30 carbohydrates and you take 2 units of insulin, if your blood sugar is consistently where it should be, does that sugar hurt your body?
Okay. I want to kind of rephrase the question to make sure I understand it. So, if you're taking 30 grams of eating 30 grams of carbohydrate, and you're basically taking 2 units of insulin, which is really 1 unit per 15 grams, and your blood sugars are doing well, so with 2 hours afterwards, they're less than 180. Hemoglobin A1C is in the 7% range. And depending on the unique range you and your doctor have set for you, if you're meeting those targets and goals, it does not hurt you. No, I mean that is exactly how you are to manage it. Now, if the carbohydrates are biscuits that contain a shortening or an oil that is not as heart healthy as the olive oils or the canola oils or the nuts that I mentioned, then that is a piece. That's not the sugar piece, but it's a piece of, well, can we adjust the fat, or are you using more of a whole grain carbohydrate versus a white? I mean, the whole grains have a benefit for heart disease and your colon and all those pieces. So as far as your blood sugar goes, that's great if you're back within range and you're meeting your targets. But I would definitely, you always want to look at the quality. And there's a really big movement. Let's look at the quality of our food versus the quantity and what we are putting into our bodies. So I would just kind of put that out there.
Thank you. We also have an online question from Patty from Colorado. She'd like to know if you have some suggestions for healthy desserts for the holidays.
Wow. Yeah, healthy desserts. I would again defer back to what Carla mentioned about the Food Hub. And there are a lot of Cooking Light has great recipes. There's so many online desserts. You can just type in diabetes desserts or desserts that have their carbohydrate content listed. But there are a lot of great resources with that online. What I would recommend, I think you want to look at, I would say I go one of two ways. Okay, what is it you look forward to? Well, let's say it's cheesecake. Well, how big of a piece? How much? Look and count that out, because there is a piece of, are you going to feel deprived if you maybe don't have that dessert that you have always had every year? I mean, a piece of dessert is not going to throw off your whole diabetes plan if you're working hard at keeping up your exercise and counting your carbs and then making that adjustment. So we could look at portion size, have what you really love, and just make sure you know the carbohydrate amount, and maybe you adjust the portion size, or you adjust what you eat in that meal so you don't have as big of a spike afterwards, because there's a piece of the holidays, there's a lot involved with it. And we talked, this is something I told my children when they were young, there's sometimes foods and there's everyday foods, but there aren't any bad foods. So we want to really look at that. So maybe your dessert is a sometimes food that you're just going to do, at Thanksgiving and at Christmas, and then you're, on your plan the rest of the time. So just think about that. The other piece is certainly there are ways you can adjust. There's a lot of, the American Heart Association as well has a lot of great ways you can have healthy substitutions. For example, if you're making a cake and it calls for oil, you could put applesauce in the cake. Now that's going to increase the carbohydrate content a little bit, but it also will reduce the calories and the fat. Or just cutting back on the sugar. A lot of times you can cut back on the sugar in any dessert by about a third, and it will not make a difference. Or you could, maybe use something like Splenda, for example, that you can substitute cup for cup if that's important to you. So I think there's a piece of, you could try to make what you love and then use a substitution, or go to certainly one of those online resources that are out there and find something that you'd like to try. Or just have what you've always had, but just pay attention and modify what you're eating in accordance with that. Hopefully that helps.
Yeah, and I think the smaller portions is key. I mean, you mentioned that before, that if you want to have a piece of cheesecake, that's fine, but don't have a quarter of the cheesecake. I mean, have a small sliver and save some more for the next day and the day after. So watching the portions at that point is important too. So another tip is, if you can use support throughout the year, there's a few resources you might want to check out. One is Living with Type 2 Diabetes program, where participants receive information through email and e-booklets that provide support and information on emotional health, eating healthy, and physical fitness. Tips on managing and living well with type 2 diabetes, as well as opportunities for support online and in your community. Participants also receive 6 issues, a year subscription of Diabetes Forecast, which it's a journal I really like, a magazine I really like. The link to sign up is on our registration page at diabetes.org/experts. Okay, let's take another question. Oh, there are a lot of questions in the queue, and I'm just going to kind of put them together into one, and that's that there's a lot of discussion about fruit, and people have been told not to eat fruit, or that fruit's bad for you because your blood sugar go up. Do you have some suggestions for types of fruits that would be maybe easier on their glucose and certainly healthy?
Yeah, and this is a topic, fruits have vitamin C in them. There's vitamin A, there's fiber, there's antioxidants, there's phytochemicals, and these are all disease fighters. So again, this is the piece I really hope you all will take away is, remember, there aren't any foods that are off limits. And as soon as we label something off limits, typically we want it to. And so that's a mental game, because fruit, there's cancer fighters, there are heart disease fighters. We have to look at the whole picture of our health and not just our blood sugars. So with fruit, yes, they are a carbohydrate. A half a cup of fruit basically is 15 grams of carbohydrate. Then it depends on the fruit. There are some fruits certainly that are a little lower in carbohydrate than others, and those are typically in the berry category. So raspberries, blueberries, blackberries, those are, you could typically, I'll usually have about a cup of those fresh, and they might be more in the 15 grams of carb range. So that's always a great way to go. Other things, having an apple, keep the skin on, don't take the skin off, because that gives you fiber, and that fiber typically isn't going to spike you as much as a food without fiber. I would say enjoy your fruit. The guideline is really 2 to 3 half a cup servings of fruit a day to meet your nutritional needs. So just incorporate that into maybe that's where a snack is. There was a snack question. Have a piece of fruit. Have an apple with some peanut butter, for example, or almond butter. Just again, about a tablespoon. So hopefully that helps. The fruits are not off limits. They're not bad. They're beneficial. We do look at, for example, bananas might raise you a little bit higher, especially if it's really overripe. But again, they're not off limits. A half a banana you could have. So, and there's benefits in that. There's the potassium in the banana. So I'd say look at what you like. I would say try to stay away from the canned fruits that are in a heavy syrup. Go with the juice-packed fruits, and then you can certainly rinse that juice off, which helps if you are looking at canned fruits. Frozen fruits are great. Certainly this time of year in Montana, our fresh fruit availability goes down. So we do look at other ways to get those into our diet, but it's very, very important. And just count the carbohydrate. Half a cup is a general estimation. It's 15 grams.
Thank you. Mm-hmm. Carol from Chicago, you're on the line.
Hi, my question is, are the sugar-free items okay to eat? And what's the difference between sugar-free and no sugar added?
Okay. So it depends on what is in the sugar-free. A lot of times sugar-free may not be carbohydrate-free. So my guidance I've typically given to my patients is really you got to take a look at that food label. If you're saving 5 grams of carbohydrate with sugar-free, but it doesn't really taste as good, I would say then have the regular. This kind of goes back to the cheesecake or what the dessert is. They are okay to have. You just may not be getting the benefit that you think. So you got to look at that food label and the total carbohydrate, because remember, sugar is just one type of carbohydrate, so it's included in that total amount. Because there are other types of carbohydrate in sugar-free items. Like for example, if you make a cake, well maybe you replace the sugar with Splenda, but you still have flour. Okay, you still have other things in there. So think about that. Also, there are some of the sugar-free items can cause, if they have sugar alcohols in them, they can cause, if you have too many servings, can cause gastrointestinal or stomach issues. You might be in the bathroom a little bit longer than you want to be. So I would watch out for that. No sugar added does not versus sugar-free. Sugar-free means there is not any sugar. But remember, it does not mean no carbohydrate. No sugar added means that there hasn't been any sugar added in the processing, but very well there could already be sugars in the food. Like, for example, fruit. Fructose is a natural sugar that is in fruit. So maybe it's no sugar added canned peaches, but it doesn't mean there isn't already sugar. And again, this really just goes back to looking at that label, look at the total carbohydrate. Carl, is there anything I missed on that?
No, I think that's good. We also have a question online about alcohol, which is a great question. Could you please talk about types of alcoholic drinks, portion size, calorie carb content, glycemic index, avoiding mixed drinks, adding juices, etc.? So just discuss alcohol in general and portion control.
Wow. Yeah, let me know if I missed. I didn't get all those written down, so let me know if I missed one of those. Good question. Yeah, alcohol and the holidays, they do kind of go together for a lot of us. And alcohol certainly is something that you can have in moderation, unless you if you have an addiction, you might not, you don't want to do that. But if you look at it, basically the guidelines are, 1 drink a day for women, 2 drinks a day for a man. If they do drink alcohol, is fine. And so I would apply that through the holidays as well. And typically a serving of a drink is like a 1.5 ounce shot of whiskey, like 5 ounces of wine, 12 ounces of beer. Now, there are definitely variations in carbohydrate content, for example. So if we first look at that, your beer is going to be more of your carbohydrate alcohol, because alcohol by itself really does not have any carbohydrates. So it's kind of what we add to it. So there's a beer here in Missoula called Cold Smoke. It's one of my favorites. It's a very dark beer. It has a significantly higher carbohydrate content, let's say, than Miller Lite. Okay, and also higher in calories. So there's that piece. For one, you really want to look that information up. Again, most of this is online if you enter what you want to drink. If it's not, because sometimes it's hard to find the carb content on the label, but you can find it if you look it up online. So that's one piece of it. So watch out for that with the beers. Definitely the light beers are going to be lower in calories, lower in carb. But the other piece of it is with alcohol, what you add to it. So yeah, if you're adding juice or you have a pina colada, strawberry daiquiri, whoa, then we're going to take this alcohol like from maybe 100 calories up to 500 calories, and it could be up to 45, 60, 75 grams of carb. I mean, you see like places like a lot of restaurants might have these really yummy ice cream alcohol drinks, which are like a meal in themselves. So you have to really watch that as well. So yeah, watch what you're adding to it. So like if somebody likes, for example, a gin and tonic, well, could you do gin and diet tonic? That can then cut the carbohydrate content. But the other piece of the picture is that alcohol can also kind of blunt your liver's response to a low blood sugar. So you may not have that recovery, for one, of kind of the glucagon producing the glucose from your liver, which can contribute to low blood sugar or hypoglycemia. So you have to be careful if you're on insulin or if you're on a glimepiride or glipizide, a sulfonylurea or other really glucose lowering medications that could that where hypoglycemia is a risk. Definitely having alcohol can drop your blood sugars. So that's where you might want to have a little bit of carb with your alcohol, and you want to monitor your blood sugars, and you really want to try to moderate that as much as possible and check, because that is a danger with alcohol. If we have a lot of just straight alcohol, you can go low, and that is typical. And I can actually just even share an example myself. I actually recently wore a continuous glucose sensor. I do not have diabetes, but I was testing out one of the new products, and I did notice that actually I went low. I had a drink with vodka, and there really wasn't any carbohydrate with it, and I dropped about 30 points. So it's just something you have to pay attention to and moderate. Did I hit most of those, Carla?
You did. I think moderation, as we all know, is kind of key, and if you're adding a sugar-rich beverage to your alcohol, it's probably going to spike your sugars. So we have a call.
And liqueurs can do that too. Sorry.
Yeah. So we have a call from Jane from Georgia.
Yes, hello. Thank you for taking the call. My dietitian said I was wanting to use prepackaged food dinners, and she told me I needed to read labels carefully because there were a lot of salt in them as well. So what is your take on reading labels in prepackaged food?
Yeah, good question. So, I think prepackaged foods can be a benefit in one way because they help with portion control, as Carla and I have mentioned, and you know exactly how much carbohydrate is in those, and it certainly, if you have challenges with cooking, that can be beneficial. However, yes, and it depends on the type. There are some that are lower in sodium than others, and so you have to watch that. And so you do need to look at the sodium pieces, but especially if you have high blood pressure, and most of us with diabetes do have hypertension or high blood pressure. We want to keep our sodium around 2,400 milligrams a day. or at least less than 3,000 milligrams a day. So you do need to watch that because they can be very high. I mean, if you're looking at a Swanson Hungry Man TV dinner, those are extremely high in sodium versus a Ling Cuisine, or there's kind of these Annie's healthy bowls. So it does, definitely. You got to read that food label. But for example, if you buy prepackaged broccoli that's frozen, well, that's basically there really isn't any sodium in that versus canned broccoli. So if you have canned food items, you can get reduced sodium, and then you can also rinse them off because not all of us have the benefit of fresh fruits or vegetables. So I think they can be helpful. You have to read that food label and think, okay, how much sodium do I need to have in a day? Is this meeting my carbohydrate goals? What type of fat is in this? Is it hydrogenated fat? Is it saturated fat, or is it monounsaturated or polyunsaturated? And then again, it lists that on the food label under the grams of fat. So hopefully that helps. But yeah, read that food label. But I'm not going to say they're off limits. You can find good choices. And Carla, you might have some suggestions as well of other brands that are beneficial or have a better profile than others.
So I think it's just a matter of spending some time in the grocery store. I mean, so often we go to a grocery store and we're in a hurry. And we just need to kind of say, oh, I really do want some frozen dinners as part of my options, and then just compare them, because every grocery store seems to have a different set of frozen meals, different manufacturers. So I think it's best to just go to the grocery store of your choice and compare items. So one other tip I wanted to give you is if you're familiar with diabetes self-management education programs, and Jennifer certainly has led many of those through the years, but diabetes education programs provide services that focus on your concerns about diabetes and will also empower you with knowledge and skills to manage it. They link you to support resources in your community, and you can find an ADA-approved program in your area by clicking on the Find a Program link on our webpage, diabetes.org/experts. You can also call 1-800-DIABETES, that's 1-800-342-2383, to ask a member of our call center with assistance in identifying a program near you. They usually require a referral from a provider, a healthcare provider, but not always. The other thing you can do is call your local hospital and see if they have a program there or if they can refer you to one in the community. So just some added tips. So we have a call coming in from Edward. Edward from Maryland.
Good afternoon. I have a question about a plan that was put together for me by a dietitian. It calls for 5 meals during the day, but not anything large. And then on the top of the matrix, it lists things like protein, whole grain starch, low-fat dairy, et cetera, et cetera. And for every meal, it says how many servings of which are the things in the different columns. Some of them are quite easy to handle. For breakfast, for example, it calls for protein, low-fat dairy, good fat, and fruit, which I kind of take care of with no-fat Greek yogurt, plain, with maybe blueberries and sprinkle some nuts on top, and thinking that takes care of that. But other items, I have a hard time pairing some of these things up. And does it really make any difference that all of these things that are listed for specific things for one meal, that they be only for that meal? Or can you, I don't know if I can get this across, but do I have to pay attention to the combination of things, or is that really part of what makes all these food items work if you combine them all?
I'm sorry, I don't want to cut you off. That's a good question. I think I understand it. Did you have more with that? Okay. So kind of the food combining, and it almost sounds like your dietitian almost kind of created an exchange list meal plan for you, and I'm sure it's beautiful and probably meets every need that you have. However, like, I think kind of what you're mentioning is sometimes it's really hard to implement that. And what I would say is the food combining piece, that's not as important as just making sure that you are getting in a day your nutritional needs met. So, and then really looking at the amount of carbohydrate you have per meal. And as long as you're staying, I say, within the carbohydrate guidelines, whether you have protein with breakfast or lunch or dinner doesn't matter as much, as long as you're just staying within the guidelines for the day. With the exception of, as we've discussed before, you really want to make sure your carbohydrates are spread out. So if your dietitian planned 5 meals a day for you, or 5 smaller meals, or 3 meals and 2 snacks, however that is that, I guess my question is that how you normally eat? We know we want about at least 3 a day, but if that's not how you normally eat and that's hard to do, I would go back and talk to your dietitian about that and try to make modifications. But really the food combination piece, I mean, certainly there are certain, like as I mentioned, fat, if you have a lot of fat with carbohydrate, that could affect the spike in your glucose. But overall, really just let's make it easy. Count your carbs at your meal and just make sure you're really getting all those food groups in a day. And it sounds like she did a beautiful job of planning all that out. But focus more on the carbs per meal, and then I'd say work in the proteins and whole fats and all those things as needed.
Yeah, I think we need to be careful about making our meals almost impossible to follow. I mean, you need to enjoy them and eat carbs within moderation and throughout the day, so that not all the carbs end up at your supper hour. But certainly we need to be not so rigid that eating becomes not so much fun anymore. So we need to kind of come up with a compromise, perhaps, in how you're addressing that. I think we have time for one more question, and I think this is a good overall question, and it's coming in from Lucille from Pennsylvania.
Hello.
Hi, Lucille.
Hi. I'm like really trying very hard to get my sugars down. And I was told I have not a clue what to eat for breakfast or what my sugar should be first thing in the morning. And so I was told not to eat any cereal, no breads, and it's like, good Lord, what do you eat for breakfast? So I was wondering if you could help me with that. That's one thing. And then I guess you already answered this question. 2 hours after I eat, then take my sugar. So what should it be in the morning? First thing in the morning, what is the diabetic numbers for AM when you first get up, and then what is the highest it should be 2 hours after you eat? And then what do you eat for breakfast if you're not allowed cereal and bread? And I do have high cholesterol, and they say don't eat eggs.
Okay. Yes. Is that everything?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, great. So good question. Good, yeah, right, Carla. Good one to end the program on. So first of all, where your blood sugar should be in the morning, really your fasting blood sugar. And what I would say, we want you as close to a normal blood sugar as possible. I mean, that's our goal, is to have that you safely be as close to what somebody without diabetes would have. So basically, 80 to 120 is typically a goal we set. Really 70 is a normal, like 70 to 100 is normal. So 80, but we have it a little bit higher for folks with diabetes because we just want to make sure we're preventing hypoglycemia or low blood sugar. So 80 to 120. Now, if you're not on meds, try to work it down to 70. And then 2 hours after a meal, really less than 140 to 180. It just depends. 180 is kind of your highest point. Again, anybody without diabetes should not go above 140. So again, we want you as close to normal as possible. But that's, and now your doctor may have some individual goals because again, everybody is different, but that's kind of the general guidance that is out there. And as far as what you can eat for breakfast, and I think to that, just that cholesterol issue in eggs, that's the jury's still out on that. Okay, you can have eggs if you have high cholesterol. You just have to watch how much you have, or if you eat 6 eggs, let's cut it down to 3, or maybe do more egg whites and a little less of the yolk. The yolk is what has the saturated fat and cholesterol, but we don't really see where cholesterol that you eat raises your cholesterol. It's more looking at the saturated fat that you eat. And so cereal, that is something that typically is known to kind of raise your blood sugar. It's kind of one of those foods that spikes you a little more than others. You can certainly look for a whole grain cereal, oatmeal, for example, especially like the steel cut oats. Those are great. But again, it goes down to portion and what fills you up. So you can certainly have bread, but try to go for whole grain bread. Maybe put a little bit of almond butter on it because that's going to help fill you up. Having yogurt and fruit, or and again, just depends on how much carb you're allowed per meal. But you can have eggs, you can have whole grain toast, you can have a whole grain cereal. Just try and watch those other ones that are really high or in sugar, like for example, Fruit Loops. Yeah, we don't really want to do Fruit Loops. That's whether you have diabetes or not. Fruit Loops aren't a great choice. There isn't a lot of nutritional value there. There isn't fiber. It's not a great way to start your day. So hopefully that helps with that question.
Thank you. So this wraps up our last question for the session. A few items before we close. Consider staying online or on the phone to complete a short 5-question survey. We want to hear from all of you and hope you will take a few minutes to provide us with your useful feedback. Jennifer, could you let our listeners know where to go for more information?
Sure. The American Diabetes Association website at diabetesfoodhub.org.
Great. To help you feel confident about your ability to manage your diabetes and heart health, we encourage you and your loved ones to talk to your doctor and dietitian about your risk. Go to knowdiabetesbyheart.org and learn more. Register for the next event at diabetes.org/experts. Sign up for diabetes education near you, and sign up for the ADA's free Living with Type 2 Diabetes program. And don't forget to get your flu shot this fall. All of these links are on our Ask the Expert registration webpage, diabetes.org/experts. If you have questions about this event, want resources to find diabetes education classes in your area, or would like to receive an information packet to learn more about living with type 2 diabetes, you are welcome to contact us at AskADA, that's ASKADA, at diabetes.org, or call to speak with a member of our call center at 1-800-DIABETES. That's 1-800-342-2383. Thriving with diabetes takes a village, and we're here to support you. Special thanks to our expert, Jennifer Troupe. I am Carla Cox, and on behalf of the ADA team, we want to thank you for joining us today, and we look forward to connecting with you at our next Ask the Expert event, December 8th at 2 p.m. Eastern Time, the gift of group support, and a whole new lineup for the 2021 year. I turn it over to the survey portion to close out our program. Best wishes for good health.
All right. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. We appreciate your feedback on today's event. To provide your responses, press the corresponding number on the keypad of your phone. And for our participants online, please click on the poll section below the Ask a Question form and click to submit your responses. Okay, here is our first question. Overall, how satisfied were you with today's event, Healthy Food Swaps for the Holiday Season? Use a scale from 1 to 5, with 1 being not at all satisfied and 5 being very satisfied. And I'll repeat that one more time for you. Overall, how satisfied were you with today's event, Healthy Food Swaps for the Holiday Season? Use a scale from 1 to 5, with 1 being not at all satisfied and 5 being very satisfied. And while we take a moment for the next question to come up, I'd like to remind you about one of our programs supporting people living with type 2 diabetes. If you have recently been diagnosed with diabetes or could benefit from a refresher, consider signing up for ADA's free program called Living with Type 2 Diabetes. Participants receive information via email and e-booklets throughout the year-long program on topics including emotional health, eating healthy, and physical fitness, as well as tips on managing and living well with type 2 diabetes. Okay, on to question number 2. Which food group should fill half of your plate? Press 1 for non-starchy vegetables. Press 2 for meat or other proteins. Press 3 for starchy vegetables such as potatoes and rice, or press 4 for fruit. And I'll repeat that again. Which food group should fill half of your plate? Press 1 for non-starchy vegetables. Press 2 for meat or other proteins. Press 3 for starchy vegetables such as potatoes and rice, or press 4 for fruit. Before we go on to question 3, we'd like to let you know that if you've missed a part of today's event or would just like to listen again, we have our full recordings available by phone. You can call the toll-free number, which is 866-686-8240 to hear the latest recording. Again, that phone number is 866-686-8240. And you can also find the full recording on our website, diabetes.org/experts. Here's question 3. Which of the following contain healthy fats? Press 1 for fatty fish. Press 2 for walnuts. Press 3 for olive oil. Press 4 for all of the above. Or press 5 for none of the above. And I'll repeat that again. Which of the following contain healthy fats? Press 1 for fatty fish. Press 2 for walnuts. Press 3 for olive oil. Press 4 for all of the above. Press 5 for none of the above. Before we move on to the next question, we'd like to remind you again that our next Ask the Experts Q&A event will be on December 8th at 2 p.m. Eastern Time. Our guest expert will talk about getting support from family, friends, healthcare providers, and others to help you manage your diabetes, especially through the stressful holiday season. To register for that event, you can go to diabetes.org/experts or contact 1-800-DIABETES. That's 1-800-342-2383. All right, ready for question 4. As a result of this event, how likely are you to schedule a visit with your healthcare provider to talk about the link between heart disease and diabetes? Press 1 for not likely, press 2 for somewhat likely, or press 3 for very likely. I'll repeat that again. As a result of this event, how likely are you to schedule a visit with your healthcare provider to talk about the link between heart disease and diabetes? Press 1 for not likely, press 2 for somewhat likely, or press 3 for very likely. And while we await the final question, remember that a diabetes self-management education and support program mentioned earlier by Carla will focus on your concerns about diabetes. This program will empower you to have the knowledge and skills to help you manage your diabetes. And you can find a link to an ADA-recognized diabetes education program in your area on our website, which again is diabetes.org/experts, or you can speak to a member of our call center to find a program near you. And that number again is 1-800-DIABETES. Okay, here is our final question. As a result of this event, how likely are you to sign up for or continue to participate in a diabetes self-management education program? Remember, diabetes education programs usually require a referral from a healthcare provider. Press 1 for not likely, press 2 for somewhat likely, or press 3 for very likely. And I'll repeat that one more time. As a result of this event, how likely are you to sign up for or continue to participate in a diabetes self-management education program? Remember, diabetes education programs usually require a referral from a healthcare provider. Press 1 for not likely, press 2 for somewhat likely, or press 3 for very likely. And that wraps up our poll question. Thank you for staying with us and providing your feedback on today's event. We offer many thanks to our expert Jennifer, as well as our support vendors and sponsors, and the No Diabetes by Heart collaboration. This concludes today's program in the Ask the Experts Q&A series. Please check out our website for recordings from this event and additional resources. And lastly, if you have any additional feedback for our team, please stay on the line to leave a message. Thank you and stay well.